My name is Teresa McCarty, and I'm the 2011-12 National Endowment for the Humanities Scholar at the School for Advanced Research. Well, the title of my project is Reclaiming the Cultural Language, Indigenous Youth and Language Continuance. And there's two elements of that title, I think, that speak to what I'm trying to do with this project. The first part of the title comes from an interview with a young O'odham woman a couple years ago as part of a bigger project, which constitutes a good portion of my data set. And we asked her what her heritage language meant to her. And she thought about it for a minute and she said, "You know, I really am speaking English instead of my cultural language." And to me, that speaks volumes about the relationship between culture, language, identity, and this other notion of continuance, which actually comes from Simon Ortiz, who is a Native American Acoma poet and literary scholar. So my project is to look at this, try to look at this through the eyes of youth, like that young girl, and to get a sense of what their experiences are in situations of dynamic language loss, or we call it language shift. The youth, after all, are probably the primary stakeholders in language and culture futures. They're the ones that are expected to be the continuers, to carry on. But actually, research has not, until very recently, looked at youth perspectives on these issues, the kinds of pressures that they negotiate every day on the ground in the context of peer culture, of school culture, in their communities and in their families. So I have a rather large database from a project that was funded between 2001 and 2007 by the U.S. Department of Education. 62 youth interviews, in-depth interviews, anywhere from an hour to some of them went as long as 3 hours. And another database I'm relying on is a more recent project I've been involved with at a trilingual Navajo, Spanish, English school, and interviews with young people at that school and graduates of that school who are going on and continuing their learning of their heritage language. And then I've also been interviewing people around the world, particularly in North America, but around the world, who are working to reclaim their heritage languages, sometimes after a period of as much as 130 years when there have been no speakers of those languages, and yet determined to bring those languages back to life with the goal of continuing their cultural identities and the things that make them distinctive peoples. So to describe the project, it's a project that's about language reclamation, trying to look at that through the eyes of youth and to privilege their voices and perspectives. But I see it as a larger project of supporting the self-determination of communities and peoples. I believe that linguistic and cultural diversity is an enabling condition. That is, without the diversity that makes us human, we lose just irredeemable human intellectual resources, the endeavors of generations and generations and generations that make us who we are. So it's a project with those larger goals of hopefully informing this worldwide movement for language and cultural revitalization and maintenance. And I hope ultimately that there will be a product that will come out of this. I've already written and have several things in press and published working with these data, and I'm hoping that there will be a book. That was the idea, to come here and to write a book manuscript, and that's in progress. But ultimately, I think the goal is to be able to put this knowledge out there for other communities to be able to use and to learn from, and to assist their language and culture revitalization and maintenance efforts. So that's what I'm doing here. Yeah.
So tell us what your experience at SAR has been like and how this has helped you move your project forward.
Well, the theme of this year's annual report, as I understand it, is soul food.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that seems so appropriate because as I reflect back on these 8.5 months of being here, it has been an incredibly intellectually enriching experience. But it's fed also not just my intellect, but it's fed my soul. And I think the fellowship with other scholars, people who are doing things very different from what I'm doing, the fellowship, the experience with people like you, with the SAR board, just the bringing together of all of these people coming from different backgrounds. This is a lesson in how and why linguistic and cultural diversity is an enabling condition for humans. It's a lesson in that sort of intellectual wealth that we possess by virtue of our diversity. And that's what SAR is. So I feel that SAR has really fed my mind. Every Wednesday, Carla Toscano, God bless her heart, feeds our bodies. And in that exchange, we get to have also an intellectual and social exchange. And, you know, it's fed my heart and it's fed my soul. And so this has been one of the most amazing experiences of certainly of my adult life. And I think it's something that I hope I'll be able to take back and share in some way with my students and with the indigenous communities that I work with.